I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, over 70% of all new relationships will happen through an online connection. That doesn't mean a 70% success rate. That just means that the old traditional ways of meeting organically, whether it was through friends, family, church, work, even a bar, are literally so low on the list compared to online dating. And sadly, online dating has marginalized the way we connect with people. What's even sadder still is human beings haven't really learned how to get to know another human being, because we almost need an accelerated learning curve to get to know someone because of time and resources and logistics.
Hello, darlings, and welcome to Not Over, Just Different. I'm Natalie Ledwell, and I'm here to share deeply insightful and vulnerable conversations with you from people who are willing to open up and share what their journey's been like, so that you can learn and be inspired to take action in yours. It's never too late to begin again or to see a new perspective. No matter what your dreams or goals are, you'll find inspiration and community here. It's time to rediscover yourself, reignite your passions, and make the next 50 years even more full than the first. Today, I'm speaking with midlife dating coach Jonathan Aslay, and we're actually talking about how you can grow through heartache. It's a really interesting podcast. I hope you enjoy. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast for this week. This week, I have my friend Jonathan Aslay joining me. Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
Hey, good. Thanks, Natalie. I'm excited to be on.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I know that you work in the dating space, specifically helping women in midlife find love and find a partner. That's always an interesting conversation to talk about. But I think today we're really focusing on navigating through heartbreak or navigating through, a situation where emotionally we're feeling pain, but then realizing what the gift could possibly be or where that could be coming from and how we could use that to our advantage to, then to evolve as a human being.
Yeah.
And I know that we were just talking before how you said you had a little anniversary yesterday. So let's talk a little bit about your experience with this and why it's just coming up for you now.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because I was reflecting yesterday happened to be the anniversary of the ending of a significant relationship in my life, a very treasured relationship where we were together about 15 months. We lived together. I went all in. I thought I wanted to marry this person, and this person had a different design for their life, and it didn't include me. And so when that came to her realization, she ended the relationship. Now, I just want to say, I don't even think we ever fought in our relationship. And she even at one point said we make great roommates, which probably was a tell right there, because we lived together well, we got along well, we connected well. I even had her on my podcast a number of times. So in all essence, I thought I had a good relationship, and it was a good relationship, but it wasn't the right relationship for her. Her life vision was different than mine. And so when she expressed a desire to leave, I didn't fight it because I believe if it's not right for one, it's not right for both. What's interesting, though, and where the pain actually, I'll bring up pain in a moment, but I kind of need to give you some context to what happened. When the relationship ended, I immediately went to acceptance. I'm accepting it. I'm grateful for the experience. I was focused on all the positives that I learned from this experience and just the travel we did and all the good things we did. And I focused on that for about 6 months. And I think part of it was also to demonstrate a very conscious uncoupling, particularly for my audience, because, my personal life and my professional life are so intertwined. What I realized, though, about 6 months in is I didn't honor the grief process. And what I mean by grief, when we think of loss, it doesn't have to just be the death of someone. It could be the ending of a treasured relationship as a loss. Losing corporate job or any profession might feel like a loss. And to actually go through the levels of grief. And I realized 6 months in, I didn't honor the pain because I actually was in shock. I think now reflecting back, I bypassed the pain by going to acceptance and gratitude. and completely didn't honor the anger that I was feeling, even though this other person wanted to make a life choice difference. It had collateral damage towards me, and I didn't even acknowledge that. And so allowing myself to experience the anger, the depression, the denial of it to some degree was a significant pain that I tried to, I'm almost going to say spiritually bypass, because I'm so in the woo-woo community, and I needed to actually honor it.
I'm like, spiritual bypass. Anyway. And I'm loving that you're sharing this in a very real way. And I also went through something similar too. As you know, I had a 3.5-year relationship.
Yeah.
I ended it in the beginning of March. Same thing. I could see my life going in a certain trajectory, and this relationship wasn't going to be part of it. And I did the same thing. Now, even though I was the one to end the relationship, I'm like, yep, this is fine. This is what I want. This is great. Blah, 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 blah. I have my freedom, all that kind of thing, not stopping to acknowledge that it was a loss. It was a big loss. And I found myself a couple of months ago, I had a little meltdown and one day, and I'm like, well, what's going on? I'm not I could handle all this stuff. And I realized I wasn't looking after myself. And part of that was because I was drinking more, because I was avoiding having to feel anything. That old chestnut. And I think that we all sometimes will have that behavior that is going to either help us avoid or numb or not acknowledge. And what we really need to do, as you touched on, is feel the pain.
Yeah.
Feel the emotion.
Yeah. As I reflect back, I feel, because I'm also a dating coach or dating a relationship coach, and, I started to feel a pain associated with, am I still going to be, relevant to my audience anymore? Will they judge me? Am I a fraud? There was more layers to the pain than just, I can't speak for other people in other professions, but I can only speak to what I'm experiencing. I felt like I had a big monkey on my back, along with the realization that someone I truly, deeply cared for didn't want to be in my life. And then I started to go down the track of am I worthy? I got abandoned. I've been rejected. You're not good enough. And all of this self-doubt started to just creep in. And, I am grateful for my, personal development, self-help, and spiritual work, because to some degree, it's like scaffolding to a building. Thankfully, I'd done a lot of work, so I didn't completely collapse. But I was still a bit on shaky ground for quite some time. And I'm even going to admit now, a year later, there is residue. But I want to say something. That residue is also a reminder to stay steadfast to all the lessons I learned in this experience, and not, wear rose-colored glasses the next time, if there should be a next time.
Well, I think too, and I'm speaking as a woman in her 50s, you're like, okay, if I end this relationship, will I ever find another one?
Yes.
I'm a little older. I'm not as attractive. I feel like am I attractive? Am I lovable? Yeah. Am I all of these things? Again, it's that self-doubt that comes in, and and I think that we can get lost in that. But I also didn't want that to be the reason to stay in a relationship that I didn't think was going to be that I didn't think was the right relationship for me. Right. So,
it's interesting. I'm curious about something, though. So I would say all my growth happened when the relationship ended. Okay. Because it kind of came out of the blue. It wasn't like we had a year or two of, with each other, and then it ended. For you, I'm curious, did healing, or trying to think of, my healing happened when it ended. Were you going through any healing in the experience? I'm just curious.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I made sense.
Because, I did a lot of work on myself with a coach leading into the relationship. It was COVID. I had nowhere else to go. I was meeting with my coach once a week. So I got to clear a lot of stuff to find relationship. But then once you're in a relationship, there's stuff that comes up that could only come up in relationship, So then I got to heal some pretty deep wounds, actually. And stuff that I would get triggered on really badly, I was able to heal a lot of that because of that relationship. So in the end, when I look back, I'm like, well, I see purpose. I see intentionality. I see that I have completely grown and expanded as a human being because of this relationship, so I feel really good about it. So my question to you is, I understand that you said, okay, you were feeling, pain, you kind of started to acknowledge everything. What were some of the things that you were doing that kind of helped you to navigate through that time? Because I think a lot of people will do anything to avoid pain or, feelings. What were you doing that was helping you to be able to sit and navigate through that?
So it's a great question. And I sometimes weigh was it spiritual bypass? Was it, because I went straight to acceptance and gratitude. At the same time, though, I really began honoring some things about myself, one of which was the positive things I learned about myself from this experience. I really leaned into, and I use the word positive, but in the sense of, how have I grown as a person? What have I learned about myself in this experience? And even to the extent of, how have I healed a childhood wound from this experience? How have I healed an adult wound? And really processing it with a coach and also being very self-reflective. It's been an amazing introspective time for me. And besides looking at what was good and what I'm most grateful for, I stepped into forgiveness. I did a study group for 3 years studying the Course in Miracles. And I would say the number one theme in the book is a bit centered around forgiveness. And forgiveness for any time I crucified myself in this experience, any time I doubted myself. And I started to just lean into flooding myself with love, so to speak. And I would continually thank the other person. Right now we don't communicate with one another because she's in a new relationship, and which is okay. I mean, we had a very conscious uncoupling. There's no need to communicate. But I continually send love to this person because I don't believe they intended to do something to hurt me. I was just, like I said, collateral damage. But I feel like those help me push through it rather than going into victim consciousness. In my previous relationship some years ago, I totally was swimming in victim consciousness. I blamed them, took no ownership. And this one, I take full ownership of my part of the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that applies to any situation, whether, making a career change or, business, whatever that is. I think that when we can sit in that place where you go, okay, well, what do I own here?
Yeah.
And you've met Bert. I actually had an opportunity to have a conversation with him recently. And because we've got to a place now where, emotions are pretty, neutral, I got to have the conversation and go, look, this is what I take responsibility for doing this. And for him, it was like, oh my God, thank you so much for being able to do that. And I think that when we can do that and we can recognize that, we can frame the story of that experience as the empowered version. I mean, there are multiple versions of the story that are true. We could tell it from the point of the victim, but then all it does is keep us tethered to that event.
Yes.
And we can't evolve from that. We can't grow from that. But when we can sit in and take that, responsibility for what is ours, I think that really helps us for future relationships or future situations, to be a lot more aware and empowered in that. So going through this process that you have, I know that you said that you went all in, boots and all, in this previous relationship. How would you feel about doing that again?
I was just asked this question today, as a matter of fact. I want to answer it a couple different ways. First off, someone recently asked me, are you ready for another relationship? Are you ready for commitment, is what was actually asked of me. And I said, I was ready for commitment before I even met this person that I just ended a relationship. My desire for a life partner is still incredibly rooted in I'm committed to commitment. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because I was radically vulnerable with this person. When I use the word exposed, I mean, I really opened up in a way I hadn't before. And part of that pain that we're talking about is I revealed myself, I think, warts and all. And to some degree, I feel rejected for that, even though that's not really what happened, but that's what it feels like. So I'm navigating the space between, well, am I going to be too picky? Am I going to be guarded? Like, I'm aware enough to know that I could do these things. And I've kind of barely put myself out in the dating marketplace. And I think we should talk about the why on that in a moment, or we could do it on another podcast. I know that I would like a life partner. I'm committed to that, whether it happens in this lifetime or not. And that's the way I kind of navigate it. If it happens in this go around, great. If it doesn't, I know that I've been on a gigantic journey to really step into who I am, what I want. And one of those things is a life partner.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I haven't really stepped out into the dating world at all. And now you've made me think about, well, why haven't I done that? I'm like,
you have a dating coach here.
No, I do realize that I have some big commitments on how I show up and serve the planet. So that is front and foremost for me right now. So let me ask you, what emotions come up for you when you think about stepping back into the dating pool?
You know, it's interesting because, and I want to be careful not to seem pessimistic, but at the same time, I'm going to call it for the way I see it. Dating is a shit show. I mean, it is a dysfunctional methodology or process, let me restate that, currently in our society, at least here in the United States. I don't want to speak for other parts of the world. And given now that I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, over 70% of all new relationships will happen through an online connection. That doesn't mean a 70% success rate. That just means that the old traditional ways of meeting organically, whether it was through friends, family, church, work, even a bar, are literally so low on the list compared to online dating. And sadly, online dating has marginalized the way we connect with people. What's even sadder still is human beings haven't really learned how to get to know another human being because we almost need an accelerated learning curve to get to know someone because of time and resources and logistics, that the time it takes to get to know someone at a heart-centered level is almost forced to happen so accelerated that we miss a lot of the real clues of compatibility. I state this now because I'm like, it's not fun to meet people anymore. Used to, like when I did online dating after my divorce 19 years ago, that was kind of fun. You know, it was a whole different ballgame. Now, I think attention span is weak. I think ego plays a gigantic role. I think the illusion that there's all this choice, the paradox of choice. There's a great TED talk that has nothing to do with relationships, but it can totally relate to this. I said this, overinflated egos. I mean, we're really dealing with a challenging time in history for human pair bonding. It's not fun.
All right, so what do we do? How do we make it fun? How do we, navigate this in a way that's not going to be soul-crushing, where we can, meet someone of substance?
Here's the thing. Like I said, I didn't want to be a pessimist as I was sharing this because, I'm a motivational coach. I'm an empowerment coach. I tell my clients it's raining great men. I mean, certainly the attitude we take into this process is going to directly affect it. So I'm very mindful of that, but I'm also very mindful of the landmines that exist. So to answer your question, first and foremost is dating a relationship triggers the number one emotional health issue I think we're all faced with, and that's I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not likable. I realize I'm not really a dating and relationship coach as much as I am an empowerment coach to encourage self-love. Because when you're operating from a place of self-honoring, self-healing, self-reflection, self-discipline, self-reliance, when you're nurturing your soul, the effects of dating isn't going to be like the current circumstances isn't going to have the same charge. So one is, this is what I'm encouraging. I mean, it's even why I wrote a book about self-love. So, and more importantly, Natalie, and this is something I'm really leaning into, is trust and faith. Like really trusting that, you know what, when the right person is in front of me and I'm the right person for them and they're the right person for me, when that's actually right there presented, that it's going to be relatively easy. It's not going to be like you have to feel like you're pulling teeth. So I'm letting go of the trying to find someone and I'm just holding space that they'll find me. And I don't mean it like, the feminine and the masculine sense of, I just meant that we will find each other in the right set of circumstance. I don't need to force it anymore as I did in the past. And I want to say one other point. I, as a dating coach, have been a big advocate for online dating. I still believe that online dating is a spoke in the wheel. The important thing is not to get attached to that expectation or the judgments or the criticisms or all the things that happen when we're in this medium that marginalizes people.
No, I agree. I really find myself in a place where, to be honest with you, because of this relationship that I had, I am feeling more confident in my body. You know, I was really lucky to be with a man who thought I was the most beautiful woman on the planet and would help me see that and feel that every single day. So that it really did do a lot for my confidence in that respect. But I'm also of the ilk right now that's like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be the best version of who I am. And I'm going to go through my life. And if I meet someone, that's fantastic. And if I don't, that's fantastic. And I think this is the energy I want to be navigating through now because, you know, I think life is amazing anyway. And if you can be in that place of this self-love and still surround yourself, like I have a lot of love in my life. It's not romantic love, but I have a lot of love through the people that I know, my soul family and all of that. And when you can create a space like that, the right person will be attracted to you. Like the right person, when they come along, it'll be like, you go, okay. And I'm not saying like a love at first sight or soulmate thing or anything like that. I'm just saying that when you're resonating in that frequency, you'll recognize them when they cross your path.
You know, it's interesting because I do believe we are going through a gigantic evolution, emotionally speaking, in our humanity today. You know, the old traditional paradigms of relationships, like my mother and father were married 66 years before my mother passed away. What's interesting is my father lived 7 more years. He lived to be 99, and he lived 7 years without my mother. You know, he was still able to, and sometimes I struggle just fathoming that because I expected them to go at the same time. Those traditional types of relationships, while, you know, they do exist on occasion, if you will, I believe the average person is going to have 3 to 5 significant relationships in their lives that are at least 3 months or longer in their lives. And so why is that so important to know? I think because every person comes into your life for a reason. It's all part of the growth experience for the individual. And mating for life may not be evolution we're in, but what's happening because of divorce and because of the online dating, because of breakups and all of these things, it's allowing an individual to evolve beyond the surface that we might have lived in from a survival perspective. But we're really being called to step into an emotional awakening. And I believe all these experiences are not necessarily like, my ex-girlfriend was my soulmate for that period of my life, and the one before that, and even my ex-wife to some degree. And that's where the way I look at it, not from a destination, but from the experience.
No, I agree. I read a quote somewhere recently that said, we enter relationships so that we get to know ourselves.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I remembered you and I run in the same circle of friends, and I was at a little party in Topanga. This is when you might remember my previous relationship. He said to me, you get most of the lessons you need from a relationship in 18 to 36 months. It was just kind of a by the way kind of conversation. And sure enough, that relationship ended like literally on the 36-month mark. But we seemed to go back a few more, like we broke up and got back together a few more times. I'm like, no, I need to get that lesson again with the same person. And I guess the question is, if that's the case, then the people that stick it out beyond that 36 months maybe step into a place where they're growing together and being each other's teacher beyond what was initially meant to be taught, like you were just sharing.
Yeah, I agree. So I think the moral of the story is that we really want to get to a very grounded, confident place of self-love, because from that place, we're not desperately looking for something. We're not, wanting something to happen and forcing things and agonizing about why didn't he text me back and all of the things that can go along with the dating journey. When we can be in a really grounded, confident place of that, then we can I think that's where we get to show up. And it's not like it's like you get yourself perfect and then you meet someone. Like, no, we're still always growing and evolving and learning. And, you just get to that place where, you meet that person where you are in your life right now. And what we hope is that you get to grow and evolve because of the relationship itself. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's all okay.
Yeah.
Especially when we're coming from that foundation of self-love.
Yeah, and I want to share something. This is something I've advocated for years as a dating and relationship coach, is intentional dating. And what this experience has taught me is to get really more grounded on who I am, but more importantly, what do I really want? I think to some degree, I thought I knew that, but now that I've had this experience, it's really helped me get clarity. And so, for example, I am in the dating marketplace, and like I've communicated to a few women, I'm like, look, personal development, self-help, spiritual practice are a big part of my life. I'm seeking someone who shares that passion because it's so big part of my life. And I've had a couple women go, look, I'm just not as evolved as you. I know the right person isn't going to be intimidated by that. They're going to go, oh, I want the same thing. But by being intentional, I'm very upfront. Now, some people tell me, well, Jonathan, you're scaring people away. And I'm like, I'm only scaring the wrong. If it scares someone, first off, it's the wrong person, because the right person's going to go, music to my ears. And so by being intentional right from the very first conversation, I don't have to go down rabbit holes with people, spending days or weeks connecting if we're not on the same page. And that's what I think the pain helped me connect more to who I really am and what I really want. And I'm grateful for the pain, because now I feel as though I have more clarity.
Well, we could definitely go down that rabbit hole a whole lot deeper, which we may do at another time. But Jonathan, I just want to thank you so much for your time today and this very candid conversation. This is the purpose of my podcast, so that we can have these like real conversations about our emotions and the things that are coming up for us, so that, our listeners can, maybe identify themselves, but also see a way that they can get through it as well. So it's been amazing chatting with you today, darling. Thank you.
Well, likewise, Natalie. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Not Over, Just Different. If you felt inspired by this episode, please subscribe and drop a comment below to let us know what you loved. My goal is to reignite the spark that you may think you've lost and cultivate a space where no matter what walk of life you are, you can step into the world with power and confidence. I would love to hear your reviews. It helps us to reach more incredible women like you. So until next time, keep growing, keep striving, and keep believing in the power of your potential. Here's to living your best life now.